Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We are headed into our final segment here where we are going to be reacting a little bit to the newest polls across college basketball. We have some new rankings headed into the final week of the regular season. We can maybe, depending on whether or not we have some time, touch a little bit on the conference expectations for who's going to come out of these different conferences headed into next weekend. But starting off with just the polls themselves, we have a little bit of a change up in the top three. Houston does hold on to the number one spot for the second consecutive week, but we have UConn jumping over Purdue. They reach number two this week. I think that, I don't know, maybe a little bit interesting. Now, UConn had some dominant wins this past week, taking down Villanova and beating Seton Hall by 30 points. I never thought that they should have been the number 3 seed after their loss to Creighton as it was, but they do jump Purdue. Purdue went 2-0 this past week. The wins weren't quite as convincing maybe as some of the UConn wins. They didn't struggle necessarily, but Michigan State and Michigan both played them a little closer than either of the matchups that UConn went up into. So, again, maybe it was just a little bit of that. Maybe it was a little bit of correction on the part of the AP poll. But we see UConn take their number 2 spot. I personally think that they are the best team in college basketball as we are a week out. But obviously, there are plenty of other great teams. Definitely don't want to take away from Houston. I think that they are incredible as well. The biggest movement in the top 25 was Kansas dropping 7 spots after they lost back-to-back games against BYU and Baylor. They now sit at 14. Kansas has sort of been all over the place this season in terms of the AP poll. The way that I think at times they have been a little bit overrated. They had a win against Houston earlier this year at home where we saw them jump up to the 5th spot after just that one win. I thought that was a little bit of an overreaction at the time, and now we see them sort of regressing to the means a little bit more. Now, I do want to say I don't think that they are a bad team, and I think that both of these losses that they picked up shouldn't be necessarily an overreaction, because Baylor, they played on the road. I have been on the record. I love Baylor. I think they are a very talented team, and I think that they can definitely do damage come the postseason. BYU is also a very nice team as well. A little bit of a surprise as they entered the Big 12 this year, and the Big 12 has just been a gauntlet. And, I definitely feel like I can see myself going with a Big 12 team in the tournament when it all comes around. But and especially considering the fact, just looking at Kansas specifically here and these losses in the BYU game, Kevin McCullough Jr. was still injured. He had missed a couple games. So Nicholas Timberlake took his place, and he went just 1 for 9 from the field, which is a little bit of my bigger issue with Kansas, which is that they don't have very much of a bench unit whatsoever. They are very reliant on their starting lineup. Elmarko Jackson, who started the year as one of their top 5 guys, has sort of fallen out of the rotation. It's been Johnny Furphy that has taken his place, and Furphy's been a nice player as well, a little bit of a spark plug, a three-point shooter, but I still think that they, outside of that, just don't really have all too much going on for them on that bench unit. Parker Brown, it's Christian Brown's brother. I think Parker is his first name, but he's an all right bench big for them it is Parker Brown, but he's been an all right, bench big for them, where it's not like the expectations are high. He can fill minutes, which is at least a start for them, but there's really not too much, initiation or creation that comes off of the bench offensively that elevates this team. So that is definitely a concern to me. I think that Kansas could be looking at a potential early exit if they match up against some of these physical teams that can get Hunter Dickinson in potential foul trouble, because, he, as much as he's not all too much of a creator himself, he's such a problem in the post that, if you don't have the opposing matchups to guard him, he's going to get his, and as a result, you can see a lot of these other players get more and more involved. But the other big dropper in the polls this week was St. Mary's. They were blown out by Gonzaga at home. I personally, St. Mary's it's a good program and they're a fine team, but I don't have overly high expectations for them. I do think this was a statement for Gonzaga, though. They are playing their best basketball of the year. I've racked up a handful of pretty nice wins here after starting off the year with a little bit of a stretch, but a tough stretch, I should say. But their only loss of the past couple months was a very close one to St. Mary's. They were able to take down Kentucky on the road, and I think that Mark Few is just somebody who, when it comes down to the tournament, I trust as a coach, and this is definitely a very different iteration of this Gonzaga team after not having some of the elite freshmen that they've had over the past couple seasons in Jalen Suggs and in Chet Holmgren, and they don't have their leader in Drew Timme anymore, but they have Graham Ike, who has been a real standout for them over the course of the past couple months, really. I think he's been really playing into his own. They have Ryan Nembhard, Andrew Nembhard's brother, of course, who's been able to be a nice initiator for them. So that has definitely been a positive as well. And they're just a team that I don't think that anybody really wants to get matched up with. If you are a higher seed and you're, looking at playing one of these lower seeded teams, Gonzaga at this point, they were just on the bubble as of last week, but I think that with their win against St. Mary's, I think they're in now. As we close out the rest of the year, I think that was really the key one for them to pick up, and now from there, they are almost locked in to the tournament, and there are going to be a lot of teams, I think, that will not want a part of Gonzaga. But other than that, I don't think there was anything all too shocking. I guess I'm surprised that Dayton is still ranked even. They're 25th, but they have suffered a couple pretty tough losses. Now, both of them coming on the road, but they most recently lost to Loyola Chicago. They lost to George Mason earlier in the week as well. So they're struggling right now. I don't expect them to be a real threat when it comes to the tournament, but who knows? I mean, still a lot of basketball left to be played, I suppose. But in terms of some conference winners here, and we will definitely be touching on this topic more so after, maybe even the days leading up to it as well. We still have these regular season games to round out as well. But I talked about the Big 12. It's my favorite conference in the college basketball landscape. It has been for the past couple years, and I think that they just play a very physical brand of basketball where a lot of teams can't necessarily hold up, and even adding the names that they did, Houston and BYU and the others as well, I think was a really nice addition for them. And I really like that Houston was able to get maybe a little bit more run against some real competitors during the regular season this year, because they're a team that has been a very good basketball program for the past handful of years, and they have I've just maybe it's stupid of me, but I just haven't necessarily trusted them quite at the same level as some of the other teams, just based off of their regular season schedule. And now I feel a lot more confident in Houston to be able to get it done. Again, maybe that's stupid of me. Maybe I get too caught up in the whole iron sharpens iron mantra, but I definitely have a better feeling about Kelvin Sampson and that group. When you look at the ACC, it's I think the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC are the three big time conferences to look at in terms of tournament bids and what's been the most competitive this season. And I think that, really when you look at these, for the ACC, starting with them, for the most part, it's just UNC and Duke. I think they are both very high caliber teams, and they are the ones who sort of are going to be the biggest threats coming out of the conference. I personally like UNC a lot more than I like Duke. Now, Duke can definitely be interesting. They have had some big moments this year, obviously losing to UNC in that biggest moment, but I think that them getting Filipowski back for a second season was a big addition for them, because typically when you look at a Duke team and the way that they are a lot of one and dones, being able to retain him for a second season was definitely a nice addition for them, and he in return has led them this season in points and rebounds, and also averaging 1.6 blocks per game. Jared McCain has been a very nice revelation for them after Tyrese Proctor has been struggling more so, I think, than expected coming into this year. The highest ranked freshman that they had coming in Proctor, and McCain has just been lights out from three. He's been a huge spark plug guy for them, and I like the contributions that he gives. I feel like this is a deeper Duke team than we typically see. But I would lean UNC because I think that they do have that elite defense when they are fully unlocked. Not to mention that they have guys at all three levels that can be a factor offensively. Armando Bacot, their big man, isn't necessarily, all too much of somebody who's going to do stuff with the ball himself. But he is another one of those college basketball bigs that is a force on the interior, that if you don't have the size to match up with him, he can hurt you. And I think that he's best, just sort of playing in that cleanup role where he can grab offensive rebounds, get putbacks to go for them. And RJ Davis has been one of the best players in college basketball this year, definitely in consideration for the ACC Player of the Year. I guess we will close this out talking about the SEC, where my pick would be Tennessee coming out of the SEC. I think that they have I think the Dalton Connect should be real contention for SEC Player of the Year. He has been incredible for them. Now, Mark Sears of Alabama is also a very nice player as well, and if he won it, I don't think that it would be any sort of a mispractice or anything like that, but I think Dalton Connect is the go-to guy in the SEC, and if you look at this conference as a whole, they currently have 5 different teams that are ranked right now. Florida, I believe, was just in the top 25 as well, and they fell out, so they could legitimately have 6, or maybe even, I feel like 6 is probably the number for the number of tournament bids. Mississippi State has been all right as well, but I think that in a very talented SEC, and shout out South Carolina for the way that they have been able to emerge this season after coming into this year, nobody really believing in them. They have definitely been effective in helping this SEC conference gain some more validity, but I would take Tennessee over any of these other SEC teams. Just the way that Connect is a very nice player. I've loved Adu, one of their bigger guys. I guess, effectively sort of plays as a center, but he has been a very nice guy as well, a complimentary piece where he's really nice on the boards. He plays solid defense for them on the other end. And you just have a handful of other guys, specifically some guards, that I think are contributors. Ziegler is good. Vescovi is good as well. And Josiah Jordan-James. So all of these guys can be contributors for them. I think that they're pretty well-rounded as well, which is why I have them winning the SEC. Again, we will sort of react more so to how all of this plays out in the coming week, but that is all we have time for today. Thank you very much for tuning in to the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thank you to the GSMC Sports Network for allowing us to host this show. Just a reminder to like, follow wherever you may be following us, and we will be back tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock, so we will see you then.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go.